on tonight's agenda, it's about ownership. And so we're not gonna let, salary, we're not gonna let credit score stop us. We're gonna figure out the way that we can position ourselves to win and to accomplish the goal that we have set for ourselves. My name is Ranisha Bing. I am the founder of Her Agenda. Her Agenda is a digital media platform that is bridging the gap between ambition and achievement for millennial women. Our motto is no one ever slows her agenda. And so that means whatever is on your agenda, whatever goal you have, you won't let anyone or anything stop you from achieving it. And on tonight's agenda, it's about ownership. And so we're not gonna let salary, we're not gonna let credit score stop us. We're gonna figure out the way that we can position ourselves to win and to accomplish the goal that we have set for ourselves. We want you to tweet also. We're at Her Agenda on social. Her Agenda Live is the hashtag, so please share. There's gonna be so much insight and knowledge shared on this panel. I don't even think you can type fast enough, but we definitely want to amplify this information because it doesn't happen enough. Like, you go to these sometimes stuffy workshops, it's like, we brought you here with wine, with food. We wanna make it a normal, everyday conversation. And that's why on the panel, we have a combination of experts and also real women who are in our age demographic that have done this. So I also was very motivated personally, just because I told y'all to get personal, I'm gonna get personal. When I looked at these rent prices, I was like, oh no, I have to figure something out. I cannot continue to be paying rent in New York City. And so, the motivation for this room to happen and this moment to happen was also personally motivated as well. So tonight we have the honor of spending the evening with 4 women who have mastered this goal of home ownership. And I am going to take a moment now to introduce them and bring them to the stage. We have AJ Barkley, SVP of Neighborhood Lending at Bank of America. She's been helping clients navigate the home ownership journey for over 20 years. Welcome, AJ. That's your seat right here. We also have Emma Gray, senior reporter for the Huffington Post. She covers women at the HuffPo. Thank you. And she's also a new co-op owner. And I am so excited that she's an owner because she works in media, and the struggle is real with the salaries in media. So if you could do it, it gave me so much hope that it can be done. Then we also have with us Carolyn, who is an account executive at HBO by day, but she is also, by night, buying real estate in Atlanta, flipping it and buying it. So she is sort of an expert in this space. But she's new to New York real estate because she just got her first New York co-op, and so she has a lot of insight to share with us tonight. And last but not least, we have Nicky Thomas, who is a licensed associate real estate broker with the Corcoran Group. And she became an agent to demystify the process after realizing just how difficult it was. And she has a ton of resources that we're gonna share with you after the event. Checklists, resources, all of that, all in like one link that she packaged together just for you all tonight. So thank you, and without further ado, I will pass the mic to AJ. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm so excited. So we're already like really close girlfriends, just in the short time we spent together. Like, I have already, ladies, have had an opportunity to have people ask me questions already. And so to your point, Ranisha, we want to make sure people are vulnerable. We're going to be vulnerable, so we'll be vulnerable together, if that's okay with everybody. Just don't, tell all our business and put it on, social media. But so, look, we know that our information tells us that single women right now, or women in general, are trying to determine how they enter into the home ownership spectrum and what they need to do. And so I just want to start there because 2 of you lovely young ladies have just purchased your first home. And I think people want to know, well, was that scary? What did you do? How far in advance? And then we'll go to the whole drama of co-ops and condos in a second. But let's just start with, How scary was that, your first home?
Or like terrifying?
Yeah. So for me, it wasn't my first time buying a home, but it was scary to do it in a city that I don't have a lot of family, and kind of that support system to kind of go complain to. But it was a challenge. It's a challenge. You're spending thousands and thousands of dollars. And as a person who didn't really have a large community of people around me who did it, I kind of was reaching for anyone and anyone to kind of like give me advice. So it was crazy. It was stressful, but it's a beautiful result.
Yeah, because we always want to make it seem like we're like so put together, and you got all the financial acumen and background, and you don't know who to ask, and they may tell you some bad information, or you just don't know. So it can be very difficult, right? So that's why we have professionals. But go ahead.
No, I think it was a really kind of scary and overwhelming experience. And as soon as I kind of started the process, I realized how ignorant I was about so many things. And I was very struck, like, how do I have a college degree and I don't really understand exactly what a mortgage is or what an interest rate is or how it's going to change, and like, and you just realize how huge swaths of the population are basically completely cut out of this kind of education, which puts us at a really big disadvantage. And so that was, I think, a really illuminating part of the process for me, how much this all revolves around who your network is, who you can reach out to if you already have someone in your family or a partner who understands finance and real estate. And so I'm excited that something like this exists, because we need to like be in a room and actually be honest with each other about where the gaps in our knowledge are.
Yeah, we talked, and Nikki's going to help demystify a lot of things for us. Right, Nikki?
I hope so.
You are. I think we talked earlier about like, where do you go? So, one of the things I always recommend to people is you probably have a relationship with a financial institution, and it's probably where you do your depository relationship with, or, where you may be doing your savings. They're probably, no matter what financial institution it is, there probably are specialists in those financial institutions, because typically you trust those people, right? That's where you go. The person you trust the most is probably the teller at the financial center that you go to. Is that fair? Most of us, we trust our professional tellers, our client associates. So, think about people that already are in places that you actually do business today. That may be a good place to start. And there's no stupid question. I mean, really. I think the two things that most people think about when they're purchasing homes is, do I have enough money for my down payment? And then, can I afford the closing costs? And that's what the information has told us. And so, we'll spend some time a little later talking more about that. But I think those are the biggest ones, right? So, Nikki, when people come to you, because you do this daily and you have insight, how do you handle like first-time home buyers or people that are just vulnerable, don't know what to ask, don't know what to do? How do you guide them?
Well, first I try to start off by discerning what do they actually know. So I start with basic questions like, have you gotten a pre-approval? Do you even know what a pre-approval is? Like, are you going to be looking at co-ops and condos? Do you actually know the difference between co-ops and condos? Before we even really talk about like what's your budget and everything else, because I'm trying to assess like, how much do you actually know? And then as soon as I realize that and don't worry, in terms of understanding the differences between co-ops, condos, all that stuff like that, if you don't really know anything about that, don't worry about that. The vast majority of people who come to me don't know these things. And we're talking about people from all walks of life. So financial wizards, teachers, just really everybody. Like, a lot of times people don't understand these things. Even people who have actually lived in New York City their entire lives won't know the answer to these questions. So don't feel embarrassed about that. And so that's why I ended up actually putting together my own first-time buyer's guide once I realized that there were certain things that people did not know. So once I kind of assess what their knowledge level is, I make sure to give them that guide, and then we kind of like, okay, let's take a step back and let me talk to you about what to expect kind of from this process. So that way you can decide whether or not this is something something you're actually ready to go forward with.
Yeah, because I think people think that they need 20% down to purchase a home. I think a lot of us wouldn't have homes or wouldn't even try to be in place to think about how to get a home with 20% down, but there are programs, and there's actually programs in the communities that are specifically focused on, helping people buy certain areas of town, et cetera. So I know you guys were nervous. So something happened because you both purchased homes. What's the one thing that you walked away from, Carolyn, that you were like, I got this now because I feel empowered? What was the one thing?
Well, I didn't feel that way.
Well, when you purchased the home, you signed the paperwork,
yes.
Something happened.
So I got and I'll get into the nitty gritty too.
You go there.
So because I got a co-op, my realtor kept saying, well, you're not approved for the co-op yet. You haven't had the interview. So good luck. So for me, I was just always having this sense of like anxiety because I was like, okay, I went to an HDFC. I don't know if anyone in the room is familiar with that. So the particular apartment I was looking at is an HDFC co-op.
What is that?
And so it means it goes based off of people who have a certain income and from the neighborhood, I would say. So if you are a person who natively is from New York, or you're a transplant to New York and you make under a certain income, you can afford this particular apartment building. And the range can be from you make under 87,000, you make under 125,000, you make under 180,000. And so I qualified for the co-op, the HDFC co-op, at the time that I was buying, but the problem is that it has a lot of rules. Like when you want to sell your property, you get a 30% flip tax. What does that mean? The co-op will keep 30% of your profit when you sell. Another thing is when you're buying, you have to have 20% down. Now, don't add up my coins like that, but I found 20%. And it's just like a lot of things that like stressed me out in the beginning. But I will say what made me really excited is finally like literally pulling from all of my resources. Like, listen, I pulled out my 401k. I asked my cousin who is in banking. I was like, hey, can I borrow a loan? I don't know if I'm supposed to say this.
Long as you declared it as a gift.
Right? Can I borrow a gift?
It was a gift, Carolyn.
It was a family gift that I'm very grateful for, and it helped me qualify. And if it wasn't for that, I don't know what I could have done. And I come from humble means, Luckily, I was in a position where I had no student loan debt at the time. I paid off all my student loans. My credit cards were, it's a process. And so I was in a financial situation where my credit score was about 740. And I'm aware of how that can be, it can be intimidating. And luckily for me, I qualified for the lending that I needed. But it was really, it felt like a win when I was able to kind of like find from the sky this kind of like funding to kind of get my down payment and my closing costs and like my fee for my attorney, because that's a whole other fee that I didn't know that I needed, because when I sell and buy homes in Atlanta, I don't need an attorney. But you need one in New York. It's mandatory. That was a $3,000 tab I did not expect to pay. And I feel like I could have done their job for them.
So you're not going to recommend that attorney?
No, not at all. Yeah, and that's another thing, having a network of attorneys, and relying on like your agent to kind of give you those tips. So it's like a lot of different things that, I look back and I kind of, even today I'm sitting down, I'm like, I didn't know that other co-ops did that I'm learning today that I wish I had like more resources to discover.
But it sounds like that one, you have to start off with someone you trust, even as your realtor.
1,000%.
Yes.
And I think someone asked me that question earlier, like, how do you know that you have somebody that has your best interests in mind? Were you going to expand on that, Emma?
No, just I think that was the thing that sort of saved me in the process, is that I happened to have a friend that primarily is a screenwriter and director, but for money, she does real estate, and she had placed a couple other people that I had known in their homes. I knew that she was going to be reasonable, going to like actually stick to the lower end of the budget, of what's out there, because I didn't have a huge budget. And so the fact that I trusted her and she could actually walk me through the process, like that was a huge gift. And of course, not everyone is going to have that person built into their network. It's not like I know a ton of realtors. I just happened to have one that I trusted. And I had a similar experience of kind of cobbling together the money. I also got a bit of a gift from family, and I think it's really important for people to acknowledge that they got help, because I think often it can look like from the outside, like, oh, someone just, pulled themselves up by their bootstraps and like,
Nah.
And no, the truth is, I think most people, especially like as a single woman, I don't have another, partner's income to supplement mine. Like, it's just me. And even though I had savings, and I also, I went to college in Canada, so I did not have student loan debt. Yeah.
There was what?
But even all of that, and with a job where I make a decent wage, especially for media, I still needed that help. And so I think it's really, really important to be super honest about that. But yeah, I also cobbled together that down payment. And the other thing that I think I didn't quite recognize going into it was that, you need to meet the minimum for the down payment, but then the down payment determines how much your mortgage is going to be. So you have to be able to afford, essentially, think about it like rent. And so I had to put down a good amount early so that I could have a mortgage that wouldn't, bankrupt me.
Yeah, which I think is a great point. So as you think about, as you guys are sitting here, obviously they're being very vulnerable, but the side of this is they're in a home, just so everybody understands. They got to the home.
It worked out.
It worked out. But I think what we wanted to make sure you guys understood is that it can be a struggle. We don't want you to be, frustrated and give up. But I think a lot of what they talked about is having a trusted person you trust. So back to, who do you trust? Where do you today do most of your financial activity, regardless if it's just simple financial transactions? Start there, whatever that institution is, because they are professionals. This is their day job, and they can help you with one of the biggest challenges is, am I ready? Right. So you raise your hand and you said 5 years, right? So most people think about it 6 months before they're going to get a home. I'm ready to go get a home. You cannot do that. Because you really need to be planful. You need to figure out how much money, you talked about it, Nick, and I'll have you expand a little bit because you do this and you're doing a good job. How much do I always start with, what can I afford on a monthly basis? It's probably a really good place to start. And you think about your current rent, right? But remember, rent, you may be paying for utilities, you may not be paying for utilities, you gotta have insurance on the house, you gotta have this, you gotta be able to fix the water heater when it breaks, you gotta be, because you can't call a landlord, right? And so when you're realistic about this, you have to build in what is the, and not the max amount. Have you ever heard about people being house poor? Now, all of it, when I bought my first house, I was house poor. And then for the second house, a little less house poor. And then the third house, a little less house poor. So I do think no one's ever not house poor. But I think as you think about this, you really should say, what is the most comfortable amount for me to be on a monthly basis? I can still pay for my car. If I have children, I have health care, I have people I have to take care of. Build all that in. And then you're going to meet with a trusted source and say, look, this is what I want to do. This is my income. This is what I have, and these are my bills. And they will start working with you to build a plan. Don't wait 5 months out. Start now, because you need to start saving and planning. And for some of us, we got to change entire habits. My feet were hurting. I walked from One Bryant Park down here, and I got 6 blocks out, and I'm like, I can't do this anymore. And I stopped and bought some sneakers. I'm like, what was I thinking? That was not in the budget to stop and buy some sneakers. But those are the kind of things you have to think through when you're ready to prepare to purchase a home, because what we want everybody to do, and this is every person in this room that is committed to you, is you want to have sustainable home ownership. You want to position people to be able to be in their home, keep their home, raise their families in their home, and model really responsible behavior to do that. So having said that, Nikki, you have this guide, right? And then could you talk a little bit about the guide for us? And then the other thing is, tell us about condos and co-ops in New York, because it's a whole nother thing. So people can, I don't know which one you want to start with, but I think it could be confusing to people.
Yeah. So the guides issues. So I actually have two guides. The first one is actually in line with this panel, which is basically how can you tell if you're actually ready to buy. And then the second guide actually goes from the process kind of from start to finish. So you've decided that you're ready to buy, thinking about what kind of apartment you want to pick, and then just kind of how the process works all the way up through closing. In terms of co-ops and condos, so a co-op is actually not real property. Who knew that? There we go. So we have a couple of these. So a co-op is actually not real property. When you buy a co-op, you are actually purchasing shares in a corporation that owns the building, who then issues you what's known as a proprietary lease. And the lease is what gives you the right to occupy the apartment. That lease is usually, 80, 90, 100 years, usually some term that you're not likely to outlive unless, cryogenics become a thing. So you're not, so basically it's for your entire life. Now, because it's set up this way, this is why co-ops have so much control over who can purchase in their building and what you can do with that apartment once you're in there. Condos, on the other hand, are actually real property. So taxes are assessed separately. You actually get like your own, title insurance and that sort of thing affiliated with it. And that's why condos can't limit what you do too much. However, there is a misperception that with condos, you can do just kind of whatever you want. That's not true. They have these things called bylaws. And in the bylaws, they can set up, like, for example, how long your lease terms can be. So that way they can prevent you from, Airbnb it, several times a month because, they don't exactly like that sort of thing. But the main difference between a condo and a co-op is a condo can't really restrict who purchases in the building for the most part. They only have what's known as a right of first refusal. Which means that if they don't want you purchasing, they actually have to buy the apartment themselves. Nobody's doing that. Okay, it's like nobody's purchasing a $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 or $1 million. They're not doing that. So basically, you're in as long as you can get your financing. I oftentimes. The thing about co-ops, though, is I do feel like they sometimes unfairly get a bad reputation because of the amount of control that they're able to exert over their owners. For example, AJ was just talking about making sure that you're not house poor. Co-ops have a financial requirement known as the debt-to-income ratio. And they generally do not want to see your housing debt, so your mortgage as well as your maintenance, exceed more than 25 to usually about 30% of your income. Basically, sometimes in certain co-ops in Brooklyn and Queens and in Staten Island and stuff, and in the Bronx, they can be a little bit more flexible. Sometimes they'll let you go up to about like 32 or 33%. And at first, when you're trying to buy, you're like, well, what if I'm okay with being like doing 40% or blah, blah, blah? Like, why do you care? And it's like, well, they care because they don't want you to default on your mortgage. Like they actually have a built-in requirement that helps protect you because the recommended debt-to-income ratio is around about 30%, not just for rent, but also for your mortgage. So if you meet that qualification, you actually kind of know right off the bat that you're not likely to be house poor. The other requirement that they often have is what's known as post-closing liquidity. This is the thing that
That's where my cousin came in.
Yeah. Okay, so this is the thing that catches most buyers off guard. Because you come in, it's like, all right, I got my down payment, I'm ready to go, da-da-da. And they're like, okay, so what do you have left over after your down payment? And you're like, what? It's like, what you mean left over? I had to script just to get
after
this. Like,
20%.
what do you mean?
You're like, nothing.
So typically, they oftentimes want to see, so if you're talking about Manhattan oftentimes wants to see 2 years worth of mortgage and maintenance.
Sitting in your account.
Sitting in your account after your down payment. So that's a pretty hefty requirement. Some buildings are a lot more flexible, again, especially in Brooklyn and in Queens. Sometimes it's like, okay, well, if you have at least 6 months, that's fine. A lot of buildings will actually look at your retirement account, so that's another thing, because we all know that, or at least hopefully you guys know that in the event of an emergency, you can actually take a hardship withdrawal. So there's some buildings that will count that in. So That is a big hurdle to overcome, but co-ops do tend to be a lot less expensive on a price per square foot basis. And, you know, they actually didn't see as much market depreciation during the financial crisis. So back in like 2009, 2010, 2011. So they can actually be a solid investment in terms of if you're looking for a place to actually stay long term.
I mean, I think that, so I'm sure people are going to have more detailed questions around that. So one of the things that I do want to make sure we leave time for questions, at least, you know, good 20 minutes, because so many people had asked questions. When you talk about debt to income, one of the things a lot of people think, and when somebody mentioned student loans, well, if I have student loans, I can't get a mortgage. If I have too much in my student loan, I can't get the mortgage. So the way you prepare yourself now, and before you even start looking at homes, let's just say you're 12 months out right now, anyone in the room, where you're just trying to test the water. So you go sit down with a loan specialist and you say, look, this is what I'm trying to purchase. This is what I want my monthly payment to be. Here's all of my debt. No need in you hiding it. They're going to find it, right? Because we do pull credit bureaus, right, to verify.
I see
right?
everything.
And so you want to do a couple things. One, pull your credit now, right? There's many ways. I'm giving you this as AJ's personal advice. You know, try to understand your credit situation now, right? Find ways to pay off your debt, right? If you have debt. And then think about what you want to purchase. And when you get closer and closer, what makes you competitive when you're ready to go purchase a home is to be pre-qualified, which is a first level review. It is not a fully underwritten loan. It is just the first blush of your capability to be in a certain price range for a home. And so it's usually a generic letter, and it says, you know, it says pre-qualification. It doesn't assume a lot of things have been verified, right? Because there's a lot more you have to do to purchase a home. But at least tells you've seen the shows where people want to go buy a $20,000 wedding gown, but they got a $5,000 budget, and they go try on a dress and they get all devastated. Or if you've watched HGTV, they take you in $1 million home and then say, oh, I'm sorry, you can't afford that home. We're going to go renovate a home. You know, it's heartbreaking.
I love that you were using that analogy, because that is exactly the analogy I use for my clients. Like if somebody comes to me and they're like, okay, so I'm looking, you know, my budget's up to $400,000. They send me like a link to like, oh, but there's this apartment over here and it's $700. You're not going to see that. No, because what's going to happen. You're going to go over there and look at that and be sad that you can't afford it. So no, we're not looking at that.
You're going to be frustrated. So you have to be realistic about that. Now, you could get a $500,000. That means you have to have a larger down payment. Or, you know, so there are things within your reach. That's why you want to be thoughtful and you want to plan and be thoughtful about that. What puts you in a competitive position when you're ready is to have a pre-qualification, because those people that don't have a pre-qualification, you know, the seller's not really sure where you know, how serious you are and where you are. And we have other real estate agents and stuff in the room, right? Yeah. So if you're a real estate agent, am I saying the truth? Yeah. Because sometimes real estate agents don't even want to talk to you unless you have pre-qualifications done. I didn't want to call you out, but I think that is one of the things that may happen.
I'm saying, like, I won't even, when I'm on the listing side, if you submit an offer to me and I don't have a pre-approval letter from you, it's not even getting sent to my seller. I'm just not, because I don't know if I'm not wasting my time if I don't know that you're actually qualified to go through with the purchase. So you have to have it. It's a must-have.
And also,
here in New York.
like competition in New York. There were 3 cash offers on the place that I bought. Still amazed that I got it. So it's like financing. It's like luckily this was the 3rd property I bought, so I had all of my documents together. So I saw the house on Sunday. Monday I got the application. I had everything in that night. So for me, I think really being pre-qualified like set me ahead of like the rest of the buyers, but also because I just had the whole package ready to go and I had a few questions, because my agent was a dual agent. So the seller's agent became my agent because I literally went on not Craigslist. Sorry. I went on did not buy my phone. I went on
buy your home on Craigslist.
Zillow, right? Zillow or Street Easy, one of those. I literally downloaded the app, and this is a fun story. So we have a mutual friend that we just discovered on Sunday because we met at her birthday party, and she's the person who encouraged me to buy my place because we met during Memorial Day weekend, and she invited people over, and I was like, oh, she was like, oh, don't mind the mess, I'm moving. I'm like, oh, where are you moving to? She said, I'm buying a 2-bedroom in Flatbush, and I was like, what? I don't know what your finances are, but a 2-bedroom rent, I can't even afford 2 bedrooms, like, to rent out, let alone, like, to buy. So I just asked, like, what did you do? And she was like, oh, I just stalked Street Easy and Zillow and just, that's how I found my place. I promise you, I downloaded the app that weekend. I found my place on Wednesday.
But see what she
That's ironic, though. I don't think that's the norm.
But see what she left out, though, is that friend, I was a realtor, so she was getting those listings and sending them to me.
See, the connections work. You guys see that. You guys see, and again, raise your hand if you're a realtor in the room, just so people can come talk to you if they want to afterwards. So go, look, they're here, and we're going to ask for your credentials, realtors, because, right, we want to make sure, right, we got to trust you. You heard the conversation here, right? So, look, they're here. And the fact that they're committed to being here, ask them questions, get their cards. The other thing is, a lot of financial institutions, I know we do it at our financial institution, is it's called Real Estate Center, right? And so if you're actually looking for a home and you're trying to figure out what homes are out there, a lot of the financial institutions, again, I know we do at Bank of America, if you did bankofamerica.com and you did Real Estate Center, you could actually go in and look at homes. And when you're looking at homes, those homes, these are real estate, these are Zillow and others and people that we're very well established with and have a connection with. If you were to select a property or to see something that you like, it would trigger a lending officer to be able to reach out to you. And I think I got that right, don't I, Nikki? I think I have that right, the way Real Estate Center. And the other thing, a lot of people don't want to sit down and talk to someone about a loan. They're like, I just don't want to see somebody. I just want to kind of go through this process virtually. Because I want to be looking down when I'm talking about certain things. A lot of financial institutions allow you to do the lending process digitally, mobily. And when you do that, I can only speak from experience where I'm from, it takes 10, 15 minutes for you to go through the process, and it starts to get you prepared for what can I do? Am I ready? What are the financial, just some of the early information. So don't wait. Start understanding and looking now. So let's flip real quick, and then we'll open up for questions. You're flipping property now, right?
Yep.
Are you on HGTV? Are you ready to get a show? Are we
Yes.
going to get you a show?
If anyone would like to, yes, as a young millennial woman who's trying to flip homes in Atlanta.
I would love to watch that.
I would love to watch. I'd watch your
You
show.
can follow me through these neighborhoods that are questionable and watch how I make magic.
So not only did you purchase your own home, before you purchased your home, you were actually purchasing homes and flipping them. Could you talk a little, I'm not sure if anyone's interested in that, but what goes into that process?
So I'm a native of Atlanta, and so they have a new thing, basically like the High Line, and it's called the Belt Line. So a lot of the homes in that area are now kind of getting renovated, and it's bringing a lot of money into the area, and the value is going up. So me and like a few partners, basically I asked all the questions. I'm like, what do I do? How do I create my LLC? Wait, I can buy a house through an LLC? Okay, so do I need to be like the primary residence? Like, how is my credit score? Like all these questions. I went through all of them, and honestly, I just dove head first, and I was able to I found my place the weekend of 4th of July. I can never forget that. Weekend of 4th of July, closed August 7th, and flipped it, and it was done by the end of December. And we had some issues because, there's drama with contractors. That's a whole other story. And we sold it in March. March 1st is when I closed.
Outstanding.
Yeah, and so that's what kind of got me excited. And honestly, it was like seeing this like home get renovated and look beautiful that I thought to myself, like, first of all, why can't I live here? And then secondly, I was like, I had a beautiful apartment in Harlem that I was renting with friends, and our rent went up in July, or we got the notice like in April or so, and I was just like, this is ridiculous. I can't justify paying this much money and living with other people. So so I started looking like, oh, maybe I want to buy. And then when I met our mutual friend is when I kind of really got the encouragement. But flipping in Atlanta, honestly, is the reason I had a lot of savings to put towards my down payment. Full transparency. If I did not, I would have I would not have the money at all.
And I think that's something, like, what I asked when she told me this, I was like, okay, is this one of those things where they say, we have limited seating, come to this place, right? I was like,
I'm not selling a conference, I promise.
Yeah, like, okay, everybody got limited seating, come, you too can flip a house with no money, like, be thoughtful about the things that you engage in. So I'm going to transition. You ladies were fabulous. I appreciate.
Actually, can I just add one thing to what she's saying? So actually, Carolyn's a really good example of the fact that just because you can't buy here doesn't mean you can't buy at all. So keep an open mind about how you go about owning a home, because perhaps you can actually afford an investment property, because then that, like, you know, if you're okay with being a landlord, which that's a whole other kettle of fish to discuss, but if you're okay with being a landlord, then that could actually generate a stream of income for you to build up that bigger down payment, which you can then put towards being here. So don't limit yourself just to New York City. Think about what could possibly work for you, because in a lot of other cities, they actually do have much better programs for first-time homebuyers, even if you are being invested. I mean, even just across the river in Jersey. I mean, it's just over in Long Island. Like, it's like you don't have to go that far for this to work out. I mean, Atlanta's great. Don't get me wrong. I love going down there, but it's like, you know, if you don't have contacts that see after your property, you could try to find something locally, but just don't limit yourself just to one vision of what home ownership could be.
So before I turn to questions, I'm going to give the ladies just a minute to give you last advice. But the point you just made, Nikki, I think is important. Home ownership is an investment. And you should think about it in terms of that is an asset. It is an investment. So it is actually a really good thing to put your money into, which is a home. So, Emma, what's the last piece of advice you would give everyone in the room?
I mean, beyond just educating yourself and speaking to as many people as possible, I'd say, like, let yourself enjoy the process, have fun. When you walk into a space, make sure that you're not going to commit to somewhere that you can't really, really see yourself living. And I think that something that happened when I walked into my current apartment, like, it was, you know, a fourth floor walk up, was all these things that maybe I had said, like, that's not ideal. But then I walked in and was just like, this feels right. It has character. I can see myself living here. And yeah, so I feel like, wait for that feeling. Wait for the one. Street Easy is better than Tinder also. So yeah.
It's the same format. You're just scrolling through.
Nope.
Do I like this one? Nope. All right, cool. Yes, swipe right. Yeah, okay, so that is really good advice. Everyone should know their credit score and get pre-approved. Like, just the small things. I wish, like, in school they taught you, like, hey, when you graduate, just see what you can get approved for. Understand, like, what range you should look for. Oh, and also, it's New York. You have maintenance fees. So that was something I was like, oh, I can afford like a $600,000 home. No, I can't. I don't make that much money. But I was dreaming big, and then I saw the price tag for maintenance, and it said $1,200. And I said, what does that mean? And maintenance is what you pay every month in addition to your mortgage, and it never goes away. You'll be living there, your mortgage is paid off, and you still have to pay that $1,200. So I was looking at places that had really low maintenance, and by low, like, the lowest I found was like 300, and I found like the sweet spot right at 500, and it's in addition to my mortgage. So get your credit score, know what it is, and also get pre-approved.
Nikki?
Kind of in a similar vein, don't sit there thinking that this isn't for you. You don't know that this isn't for you until you actually get a full handle on your finances, until you actually take a look at what's going on. And just because your finances aren't where they are today, don't think it can't happen. Because if you plan it, it can happen, and you don't know when. And until you educate yourself, until you get a handle on your credit score, until you get a handle on your finances and learn about what programs out there, you don't know if homeownership is going to be out there. So if this is something that you want, pursue it. See what happens. If you're not ready yet, there's all sorts of things that we can do to help prepare you to actually be ready.
Which is a great segue into questions. So what questions do you have? You can ask anyone on the panel. Yes?
First, I just want to get this out of the way. How old are you ladies? And I know you're never supposed to ask a woman her age. But if you don't mind, I think it would really set the stage.
This is Tinder. So no. I'm 31. I'll be 32 in a month.
I'm also 31, turning 32 this year.
So I am going to be 37 this month. So, and for those of you who we're in our upper 30s or close to 40s and stuff, don't feel bad. I live in a rent stabilized apartment, which is why we haven't bought yet, because it don't make sense, because we're rent cheap. But we actually are thinking about buying an investment property within like the next year or so.
I could have given birth to all of them, so you know. Ask the question. That's a great question. Because your point is they're young, right? They're in the age bracket where they're making these decisions. Yeah. So we're going to bring the mic to you, ask for questions. Can you just raise your hand if you have one? Okay.
So I was speaking to my landlady earlier today who has flipped all kinds of houses in Manhattan. And she said to be warned about property taxes. So that's something I haven't heard any of you bring up. Would you mind talking about that a little bit?
Was there anything in particular that you wanted to know about property taxes?
Some places and it's not in others. And to look out for that.
Well, my co-op includes its taxes within my
And the
maintenance
maintenance,
fee.
yeah. So co-ops will typically include your taxes within the maintenance. And one of the things that people actually don't realize is that a portion of your maintenance oftentimes is actually tax deductible.
Yes.
There are tax benefits to,
Oh, yeah.
There are tax benefits to home ownership, especially if the co-op has an underlying mortgage. When it comes to condos, because you actually own real property, the taxes are assessed separately. Probably the concern that she is talking about is when you are in an area that is rapidly increasing in value, that's where you're likely to get hit because
Taxes go up.
Yes, because of the assessments. So as more properties in the surrounding areas increase in their value, you're going to be hit with a much bigger tax bill. So, and also too, she could be talking about transfer taxes. I don't know if you guys know, but recently New York State they did actually increase what's known as the mansion tax. It's only going to hit it's going to start to hit like around 2 million. The tax, well, first the original tax comes in at about like 1 million. These increases are generally graduated from 2 million and above. So for most first-time home buyers, unless you really most home buyers are going to find themselves well below that threshold. So not really something that you'd have to concern yourselves with.
It's me again. My name is Eunice. How's everyone? We're out of the Philadelphia and South Jersey market, and we've been in real estate for a very long time, professionally.
We're old, in other words.
But I want to talk about, you guys mentioned school and, not being taught certain things in school, right? And I truly believe that, formal education will make you a living and self-education will make you a lifestyle, right? So with that, I've been reading a lot that a lot of millennials are weighed down with student loan debt, okay? And in ways that other generations just have not experienced. So in my communication with millennials, I see that there's a lot of fear there with stepping out to purchase homes, and they're just not making that type of decision. So can you just talk a little bit about that and, ways that you can kind of manage? You understand where I'm going, right? Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
yeah. So I had student loan debt, and I was paying like $600 a month, I think, or something like that. And then I just kept living like that after I paid it off. So I literally put that much money into my savings account. And then that's the money I used to flip my first house, and then that. So for me, I will say that is a privilege because I have a lot of friends who are 20, 30K in debt, and it is a burden. Like my brother and my sister-in-law are both attorneys, and I think they're gonna be paying student loan debt well into their 50s. And it's actually that's a lie because she's 49. So anyway. But I say that to say it's a burden, but I feel like this. You can hopefully find something within your range that you can afford. Because I still live according to that lifestyle, if that makes sense. I still save that money every month.
I think the other question too is people think, to your point, they think they can't get a home because of their debt.
And that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and that's not the case. But you don't know until you sit down with a specialist to tell you because your debt to income ratio, and I'll have my lending officer people and teammates in the room. Your total debt for student loan is not the total debt that's calculated into your debt to income ratio. It is what you're paying. Your debt to income ratio is really based on what are you paying out on a monthly basis.
It's the minimum payment.
The minimum payments.
On the student loan
Yeah.
that we hate.
Yeah, and also like co-ops are actually much more forgiving. Actually, a lot of co-op boards understand that a lot of people, especially if they're under the age of 40, are going to come with a lot of student loans. And so the debt to income ratio that I gave you guys, that's for housing debt. When it comes to your student loans, they really take, a lot of them take more of a holistic thing. So it's not like everything plus your student loans has to be 25 to 30%. Now some really like, okay, maybe if you're going to Sutton Place, okay, maybe, but like something like, but that's like a whole other thing. But most co-ops, they understand, and they just want to see that like you, and that's where, at least if you have like some savings left over, that's where the savings thing kind of helps you. So if you have some savings left over after your down payment, then usually if they see that you have student loan debt, that's not really going to scare them too much off of you.
I think the only thing I would caution is you don't know until you go to the financial institution that you're going to be getting your loan through what their criteria is to underwrite the loan. So what we're sharing with you guys are really like general information. This is not as telling you how loans get. I know the real estate agents are there. I need to tell them that this is not necessarily the case. So that just continues to speak to what we're trying to demystify is you can still get a home with student debt, was why you asked the question, and don't let that stop you from getting from getting a home. But you don't know until you sit down with someone and you ask these questions around how is my debt to income ratio calculated and how do you consider that your financial institution and for the co-op and for things like that. So you gotta ask the question. That was a great question. Thank you. What other questions?
Hi, my name is Maisha. Thanks so much for speaking with us today. So my question is, I didn't hear much of you talk about the programs that are offered for first-time homeowners. Can you talk about those, some of the programs that you've heard of, and what are the benefits or not benefits of doing those programs, especially for people who have student debt or whatever kind of debt they have?
Yeah, so look, at Bank of America, we have multiple first-time homebuyer programs. We have grants to allow you to contribute to lender closing fees. We actually just launched and announced, 24 hours ago, our $5 billion commitment to help home ownership over the next 5 years. We want to put 20,000 more people in homes. And we're going to do that through 2 programs. And so you do need to talk to your lender and the specialist, because they're all, look, they're programs that the cities do, the communities do. There's multiple programs. So if you don't ask, you don't know. So that's a great question. So financial institutions have programs. We have, we're going to assist with closing costs. We can assist with down payment assistance, depending on what loan you use, because there's multiple loan types, conforming loan types. But I would suggest you go look for grants that are, and maybe you guys can speak to, I don't know if any of you guys got those grants, but do not think that there is a way. And if you don't go ask, you won't know. So financial institutions have them. You don't, and depending on which one you go to, there's no repayment. I mean, it is just like, for instance, what we just launched in our, we're going to be launching this quarter, the low down payment assistance is not a repayment. That is us giving you down payment assistance, up to $10,000. And so you got to go do the research. So wherever you, again, this isn't a commercial for one financial institution. I'm just like, go where you go and go ask those questions. And this speaks to get a lending specialist, get someone that can really guide you, because how many lending officers do we have in the room, right? So we would go to you. You'd know the programs, right? You want to know the programs. Right? And so go to people that you trust, that this is their day jobs. I think they'll maybe help you. But did you guys use any programs?
Because you use the HDFC, which actually,
Yeah.
that's one type of program.
So HDFC is a program, and you can find HDFC properties literally on Zillow, on Street
Yeah,
Easy.
they're listed like regular.
Oh,
HD.
D is in dog, F is in Frank, C is in Carolyn. And it's amazing. There are a lot of, because we were talking about our co-op differences, and there are a lot of stipulations that come with it. But the thing is, I was very fortunate because there was a lender at the open house, and they had the exact same program that Bank of America just launched, and I got 3.25 for my interest rate.
That's really good, decent.
I have not seen that anywhere.
No.
And they gave like up to about the same amount, like almost $7,000 towards my down payment, which ended up being like way more than that, but it helped, and I needed that. And and I went with another bank that's a private bank, but I was banking with Bank of America since I was in college. So it would have been so much easier to just go with the bank that I had been with.
Kick Carolyn off the panel.
Right. So I still bank with you guys. But I wish there were other programs like that, because for me that was so helpful. And I would 1,000% say that that's a program that would really help. But I had a really hard time finding first-time home buyer programs in New York. I had a really hard time.
So they do actually exist, and one of the things that the first guide that I was telling you about how to prepare to buy actually has a section that, so not that guide, but like the extras, because after this, so I basically have the guide that kind of takes you through the steps about how to prepare to buy, and then once you're finished with the guide, there's actually a sign up for extras if you want to be included on like that email series. And in that email series, I actually go more in depth about the first-time home buyer programs that are available specifically in the state of New York. So if you have a pen and a piece of paper, write this acronym down: SONYMA. SONYMA. That stands for the State of New York Mortgage Agency. It is an agency that a lot of people don't even know exists. SONYMA. SONYMA. And so they actually have a number of programs geared specifically towards first-time home buyers, for people who are looking to rehab properties in certain areas, for people who have just graduated from college and are looking to get their first home. Now, some of these programs aren't necessarily going to be applicable to the city of New York just because of certain restrictions, but there are a number of those programs that you can actually do, and there are banks that do work with SONYMA. I think you guys, I think Bank of America is actually one of them that works with them. And one of the upsides to that is, in addition to having, down payment assistance programs as well, where the way it works is it's a loan that you don't have to repay and can actually be forgiven after a certain amount of time. They can give you really good interest rates, and that right there, that's a savings right there. The difference between not having to pay an extra point on your interest rate over the life of like a 15 or 20-year loan is huge. So there are things, it's not as plentiful as what you would find in different states, but it is there. You have to ask, you have to do your research, but things are out there. Don't just assume that, oh, well, I don't have wealthy parents, or I don't have a six-figure salary or anything like that, so I can't do that. Don't assume that. You need to look into it first.
My name is Nicole. This is for either of you. I was just wondering, I know a lot of people take saving, the savings part of it very seriously. They sort of don't really go out and eat at outside restaurants. They don't go on vacations. They don't even eat dinner or eat bread every day, I'm not saying that's me, but I just want to know, what are some are there little lifestyle changes that can help with that? And, don't take an Uber one day, or any little thing that can sorry.
That was me from June to my closing date, August 30th.
Yeah.
Austerity budget for a bit, yeah.
My friend's like, oh, we're going out for nope. Sorry. Honestly, I just became very conservative. I don't know if there's a cookie. For me, I had to, because my finances were being reviewed, and so they're like, you just got to prove that the bank is giving lending. Just don't go out and buy a car before you close. Don't do anything.
Right, don't make any big purchases that might flag anything. I also started using Mint to just track my spending, so that, because I just felt like I was living in a way that I wasn't crazy aware of everything I was spending, and then I could sort of identify I didn't need to take that Uber pool at that time. Just making those small little changes. I started doing Rent the Runway more to cut down on retail therapy. So just little. Can you tell them what it is? Rent the Runway. You can pay a monthly fee and you rent clothing. So, and then you can switch it out at any time. So it's just a way to get that sort of rush of having a new thing, but it's more eco-friendly, and also there's different tiers, so you can kind of tailor it to your budget. So I think it's totally dependent. Also, what are the things that you splurge on, and what are the things that you feel like you need to maintain a lifestyle that you're going to be happy with. Something that was very important to me is that I didn't go out of my budget and try to purchase something that was going to really decrease my quality of life, because the point is to increase your quality of life, and I think you can make cuts without, you don't want to like not be able to afford to eat. That's not worth it. So
Yeah, I started cooking.
I was gonna say, I
mean-
gotta learn
me
how to cook
too,
now.
which is
I gotta learn how to cook.
been a lesson.
And in the summertime in New York City, for everyone here, I like to go out. So it was a lifestyle change, and I mean I'm talking from a very extravagant perspective, but I literally had to because I know myself, I budgeted every week. All right, you can't spend out of this. I didn't drink as much. Like seriously, it was a sacrifice for
Just
that time.
not doing happy hours as often.
Yeah.
With the financial institutions that you currently do your banking with, they typically have tools to help you with budgeting, and you should just go. There's probably stuff that you have access to right now to prepare you that you're not even thinking about. You should go ahead and use those tools. The other thing I'd have you write down is Khan Academy. Khan Academy is phenomenal. It is free. It's like free school. And if you want it, you can go online and you can say, tell me how a mortgage works. Tell me what's a good savings plan. And it actually keeps it in really what I call kitchen English. And y'all know Khan Academy? Yeah. It is so
I'm learning
cool.
so much today.
And it'll help you in the comfort of your own home on your laptop to start to get educated in a way that is pretty simple and pretty easy.